Hi guys, thanks very much for inviting me to do this. I'm Stewart Everett. I'm the Chief Executive of Equine Register. Before we start, I was just going to explain that the Central Equine Database is one in the UK, and it's an enabling platform that supports policy, and with the associated applications that underpin it, it empowers the whole equine industry. We provide national identification, registration and lifetime traceability services. So should the inquiry in Australia determine that there's a need for a system like this, I just wanted to say that this could be a huge opportunity for the Australian equine industry. It's not a prescriptive thing, and it's not a kind of, you know, everyone fears kind of Big Brother and all that kind of stuff. It's none of those things at all. It's all developed with the users, and it enables policy to deliver what they need to deliver to support the national herd and support the people working in the industry, but it enables the industry themselves to come together and start to deliver the services and products that they want to deliver in there. So this runs in the UK, is one overarching lifetime traceability system. It's compliant with international rules. There's EU legislation it's compliant with, and in that you've got GDPR as well. Now we have GDPR being the most prescriptive that we found of all the general data protection regulations. I know you've got data protection regulations in Australia, and rightly so. We want to assure you that in this system, everything is baked in from scratch, so you don't have to worry about it at all. This supports, as we said, industry and policy. It's designed with users and tested with users, and it's flexible and ready to roll out. The other thing that it promotes is internal, national and international border movements and biosecurity pre-registration. That puts it basically at the forefront of identification and traceability technology. Now, as we said, we provide the Central Equine Database for government. It's a statutory system, and it's got some incredibly sophisticated stuff behind it, but it's very, very simple to use. We also provide a number of applications for the users, as I mentioned before. This includes, which some of these we'll talk about today. It's way too big to talk about this all in this webinar, but I'm happy to take questions on things. But if we look at them, there are the user groups around the outside. We do work with other user groups as well, but these are the kind of main ones we've got applications for. You've got the kind of enforcement and government and policy in the blue circles. Then you've got transporters, who are an incredibly important part. That could be air transporters, road transporters, private, if you've got your own horse trailers, everything else. These guys are important, incredibly important in the traceability and biosecurity, because they move animals from point to point. You've got the competitive and sporting place. That enables organisations, disciplines to put their results into a digitally verified identification. That's not about us or anyone else being in charge of the results. It's nothing to do with that. It's just being able to tag results to the identification profile of an animal. We've got dealers and auctioneers. They're a biosecurity risk, and they can be easily sorted out. They can also be a fraud risk, not themselves, but because people can move stolen horses or missing horses through the system under the wrong identification information if you're not careful. You've then got abattoirs. We have a strict food chain safety code here and across Europe. I understand there are a couple of abattoirs who slaughter into the food chain in Australia. We protect the food chain because it's very, very important, that side of it. We then come on to the green circles that include vets. We'll talk about that today. Stud books and passport issuing organisations, and owners and keepers in the general public. Those guys are tied together in a traceability and identification piece. And then you have welfare and NGOs. Now, most of that is then over the top of that clips what we refer to as the international hub, and that enables the movement, secure movement of animals across borders within, to different member states. So the other thing that this does is it underpins research. And this might not have, it may well have dawned to you guys early on, but essentially the research, this opens up the most incredible ability to do longitudinal large cohort studies. These aren't just distant esoteric subjects. You can start to drive change on the ground about, for example, look at the prevention and management of colic. look at the prevention and management of lameness. And you can also look at improving performance through genetics, all that kind of thing. But if you've got the ability to trace equine records as they go through their life, and you've got the ability to communicate with owners as they change to say, are we able to keep the horse or the equine in this study? You've got the ability to start to do some very cool things and drive some very cool information. So the CED provides access to local authorities and trading standards. Trading standards are our enforcement arm in the UK for crime. Other than the police, they obviously work with the police, but they deal with the anti-fraud and welfare side. You've got Food Chain Safety, who are the Food Standards Agency and Food Crime Unit, and you've got competent authorities and enforcement, who are essentially the kind of government and the policy guys and the borders guys, everybody else. Now, those people, the system is developed to be picked up by a handle and dropped in somewhere else. And if you need specialist areas or specialist questions or specialist development, it's incredibly easy to do. The system is incredibly flexible. Platform's very flexible. So if you've got name changes, if you've got slight different ideas in policy and things that you need to nail down, it's all doable. You also have public access at the second to owners and keepers, again for the anti-fraud side of things. They can do what we affectionately call a chip checker check, which is a bit like checking a car number plate, and you can start to see things. This equine was reported as missing, this equine was reported as dead, this equine is a Shetland pony, and that's clearly a racehorse that you're being sold. So you can start to see and get confidence at a public level about what's going on with the animals. You've got veterinary, food chain safety and biosecurity, and then you've got the kind of the chip check stuff in there. Now we have 1.3 million records. It's actually slightly more than that on the system at second. We have around about 650,000, and again, it's slightly more than that, owners. There are 32% of the animals that are out of the food chain, but we know there's actually more than that, and this is the new platform that's just been launched last week, enables owners to change their food chain status and rule their animals out of the food chain for whatever reason they want, whether it's a drug toxicity reason or whether it's a moral reason. Microchips, currently 45% are recorded on the system, but again, the new statutory instruments coming over here, the new legislation requires all animals to be microchipped, and there's the opportunity to push that through directly onto the system from the owners when the vet comes and puts a microchip in the animal. We expect that number to ratchet up very quickly. We're in an amnesty period until the 1st of October, I believe, 2020 currently. So there's an image of the chip checker. We get thousands and thousands of checks a week, and it's really starting to make a difference and really starting to help people find out what's going on with their animals. As we said, we're all GDPR compliant, and it's baked in from the beginning, and that's really important for anyone who's considering doing any kind of national system, that you get the data protection put in there at the beginning. The other part that's really important is verification of any of the users. Now we have a very sophisticated, very quick set of verification checks that we do, digital, biometric. There's all sorts of other things that we pull together as well that sit in the background. And we verify anyone who is using the system. We don't verify anyone who's using a chip checker because they don't get back personal information. They just get back standard information about the animal. But we verify anybody who's uploading or reading information of a secure nature on the system. Now, the system itself will deliver access to this information depending on the user group that's accessing it, and it will deliver that information specifically. So, for example, one of the examples that we use is that a borders official does not care who the fourth previous owner of an animal was at 2 o'clock in the morning in the pitch dark, but they do care if it is vaccinated, stolen, or allowed to go either that way or that way across the border. So we provide very simple links and front ends to enable everybody to do what they need to do quickly and effectively. So if you've got verified data on the system, so I know who you are and I know where you live, that means we then have a level of trust because we can start to police it. Now we find that actually people don't mind that at all, and from there they get to start to do some really cool stuff. We set up SMS alerts, we set up various things about location to help them, and this all helps with disease control, disease management, crime control, and also helping people booking into different things and managing animal welfare. Now, if we look at the digital stable, which is essentially the kind of hub mothership that underpins this whole thing from a public perspective, all the owners are in there, the keepers are in there, trainers, everybody else has their own profiles within the system, and they all link together. So once you've got that, you now have the ability to communicate with the people. So hard to reach groups are much easier to reach. It is much easier to not only disseminate information, but to check if it's being received and understood in a cogent way, and then change how you move that out. So with your stable, you claim in your horses, you put them in there. This is very much the owner end of things, so it's very much more kind of Facebooky type, much nicer and friendlier. You've got a business version for livery yards and also for big owners who have a lot of animals, which obviously shows slightly different views. We find in the UK, most people have, weirdly, they own 1.8 animals, which is incredibly messy. So then we've got the ability here to start to record some very cool stuff and start to let the owners, the keepers, the trainers drive what's going on. So they can put in where is their animal now. Personally, I don't mind where your animal is, but if you tell me where your animal is and it goes missing, we have a fighting chance of getting it back to you quickly. We also have a fighting chance of alerting you to potential disease outbreaks, to potential crime things that are going on in the area. We'll send you information out that is targeted so you don't get bombarded with things, and hopefully you will never hear because nothing's ever happened. But it does show already when people receive these alerts over here, they act upon them because it means something really important to them. Now we've got the ability to interact with your stud book or passport issuing organisation. You've got the ability to add microchips. You can exclude your animal from the food chain. You can look at the vaccinations and start to get verified vaccinations, which we'll come on to in a second, which is really important because although you can have the vaccinations as an owner or trainer or keeper, it's really impressive when it's verified, independently verified, which enables the generation of high health certification. You can put your insurance documents in here. I don't mind who you're insured with. This isn't about selling insurance. This is literally if you are in a moment, an event where something disastrous has happened and you need to look at the insurance against that animal, it gives you the chance to access those documents when you're in the middle of nowhere or at the side of a race course or wherever you are, and you need to make some decisions quickly about what is covered, what isn't covered, and how you go forward. Now, sales status is quite an interesting one. We were asked to put this in a while ago because over here there are often cases where people who have their animals on livery or looked after by other keepers will find the animals get sold out from underneath them without their knowledge. So you have the opportunity as the owner to put this animal is not for sale. So when somebody checks on the chip checker, they can say, you're not allowed to sell me this animal, what you do. So that's already helped. It's starting to reduce low-level crime here. So you've also got the ID information, ID and passport along the top there. So that's all the information about your horse. There'll be stuff about its gender, whether it's gelded, that kind of thing. You can start to interact with the passport issuing organisation or the stud book. You've got documents that enables you to check and keep records of show entries, of all the biosecurity passes you need to access competitions, of border crossings, all that kind of stuff. It holds it there as a folder for you. You then got the stud book and DNA side. We find a lot of people have what we call overstamped passports. Over here, they may have a part-bred horse that's registered with several stud books to enable it to deal with those competitions. This helps support the stud books, this facility. As soon as the animal is sold, all the stud books get notified so their data is up to date, rather than just the one that's issued the passport. You've also got the competition side, which leads to issuing of the passes for the shows, understanding what's going on at the shows or the competitions, and it keeps your information about your animal, about riders, about all the membership numbers, everything that you need, and it has an area of API that can link in and send the results into there if that's something that's of use. We now come on to alerts. This is a way of starting to educate people. This isn't, the people who are in charge of this can choose, okay, we're going to go on a vaccination drive. Let's start to talk to people about why. let's start to talk to people and move them through the system and say, come on, this would be a good thing to do for these reasons. And you can start to have effect on the national herd. This is about communicating with hard to reach people. So you can start to nudge and move through. It's not prescriptive, it doesn't shout at people, but you can start to have an effect. And we found this works really well. That includes microchipping, that includes compliance generally, it includes best practice. Now, we have a lot of animals that get loose or get stolen. We don't have a lot that get stolen, but we have some that get stolen. There's a lot of animals that get loose. So this gives you the opportunity to report an animal missing, and immediately people are alerted and are able to start to join the dots up. You'll notice underneath reported missing on the right-hand side there's a note that says, I've found this horse. We regularly get calls at the call centre with somebody saying, my God, there's a huge animal in my front garden eating the rose bushes. What do I do? So then we can start to join it up and say, this is where it goes. This is how you move that forwards. You can change the ownership in real time. We have an older paper passport-based system here, which is a legacy system, but this is now being replaced and moved forwards. It will run in conjunction with digital registrations and smart cards, which are coming out. All the system supports this. We'll have a little look at some of those later on. But they basically are, they're very cool things that enable you to do what everyone thinks they should be able to do anyway. But while the process is going through, while the paper passports are keeping up, while you're notifying the stud book of change of ownerships and things, you can start to move the animals from one owner to the next owner digitally. And this enables you to stop your responsibility at a certain time and date, and for the next person, the buyer, to start their responsibility from the time and date. There's all sorts of things that surround that that are very useful, but you can now see that at the top there, this goes straight into the Central Equine Database for the stud books to review and decide whether they're happy with these things to go on. And then they make their decisions and they update the Central Equine Database, which updates the digital stable, and the whole thing works in a big circle. For example, here, the stud book is being notified of a food chain status change, a microchip addition, and then a sex change, gender change from male to gelded, and then you've got the previous owner and the new owner, name and address. This is an example of an alert you would receive within the digital stable. It says influenza, it could easily say strangles, it could hopefully never say West Nile virus or African horse sickness, but it can say whatever you need it to say, and this is driven from a kind of disease control biosecurity end. This is not a thing that goes up when people think they've got something. This is very, very serious, and we'll come on to how this works. It enables text to be sent out to people that you can use a myriad of communication platforms to do this. Now, if we come onto the veterinary application, this underpins a lot of the information that is used and a lot of the independently verified information. Now, we work with the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons over here to verify that a vet is a vet and that they're allowed to practice at that moment in time, and they haven't been struck off yesterday or they haven't been suspended or whatever. So there's a constant knowledge that the people interacting with the data are the right people to be doing it. We're also supported here by the British Equine Veterinary Association. Now, the veterinary app is brilliant, and it does a load of things. I'm just going to pick a few things up for you today because there's not enough time here. But you can put in microchips, and you can also report existing microchips that are into the system. A vet can independently verify that microchip is put in the horse, but is never registered to anything. It's true. I'm a vet. I'm saying it is. Or you can report a broken microchip, and you can say, or a failed microchip, and you can say, I put a new one in. So you've also got vaccination and controlled drugs. For our world, controlled drugs mean drugs that affect the food chain status of the animal and remove it from the food chain. The vaccination is self-explanatory. The vet can start to independently verify that they've administered whichever one to that animal, whichever animal at that date and time in that place. You've got passports and smart cards. That's the digital side of it that we'll come on to. You've got certificates and receipts. This allows people to produce high health certification and audit receipts for the work that's done, which is part of the traceability piece, and it also enables horses to move, whether it be across internal borders or external borders or all over the place. And then you've got the ability to record death, which is incredibly important because it takes the animal from the system and it embargoes all their UELN and chip numbers to prevent fraud ongoing. So other things you can do, you've got, so someone steals the vet's phone, they can't really do a lot because you need their fingerprint or PIN number to do any of the stuff. They can go through the process, but they cannot actually update it. You've got the middle screen there shows one of the audit receipts of what a vet has done, where they've done it, which horse they've done it with. In this country, there's a law that a vet has to identify an animal before they treat it, to check the food chain status. This shows they've done all those things. And it produces a certificate like that, but actually the certificate, you could get someone to knock that up in Photoshop. That's not the important piece. The important piece is down in the right-hand corner, which gives live access to the actual data that is stored on the Central Equine Database and in the digital stable. You have biometric security to know that the vet is the vet. It's very quick to do. They do it once and off it goes. And as I said, RCBS verified. Now, the other thing the vet can do is they can look at vaccination history. This does the heavy lifting for all the different vaccination times that are associated with different disciplines, which are incredibly complex considering they're all the same drug. You can enter, it's a dressage horse, it's a show jumping horse, it's an eventing horse, it's a racing horse, it's whatever it is, or it's a general hobby horse. You can make the decision about when the next booster or whatever is done. You can start to look at what's been in there, if they've missed times. You've got vaccination details about strains. So for example, if you've got Florida Clade 1 and Florida Clade 2, if some of the vaccinations only hold one of them and the other strain comes into the country, you can actually then start to target those animals that think they're vaccinated but aren't vaccinated with that strain, or you can target obviously the animals that aren't vaccinated. You've got this in real time updating, and you get to set a reminder in the owner's digital stable and also on your system that says, in order to be compliant, if you're doing your disciplines, you have to do it by this date, the next piece. You can check that microchips are unique, that they're not already in use. You can generate high health certificates. There's the vet markings piece, which we'll come on to, which is the biometric piece. It's important that a vet marks up an animal in this country, and they take data points from their markings. The system turns those into a digital fingerprint, and it enables you to do searches and identification of animals with reverse lookup, almost like a fingerprint lookup, but through the markings. And then they can get audit receipts of what they've done, which underpin the traceability. This updates the Central Equine Database in real time, or the minute that they get back into mobile signal. All the products work on or offline. All the products work across any platform, so they can park things, move things on, do them on a different platform when they get back to the surgery, whatever they need to do to the practice. But also, everything is about simplicity. We enable, we ask vets to either barcode scan, use optical character recognition, Bluetooth, or speaking things in, anything to stop them typing and making human error, and we remove human error where possible. We try and do things that take no more than 3 clicks. All the vet app, as much as possible, can be used in one hand because they've often got a horse in the other hand. And the other thing that we try and do is, where we've worked with them on the ground to develop these things, we have a kind of light and dark facility on the application which can toggle, because sometimes they're in a dark stable, sometimes they're out in the beating sun. Obviously not in the beating sun in the UK. So then we come on to event biosecurity. You now have animals, you know who the animals are, who the owners are, where they're kept. It's all independently verified. You know who's looking after them. You know which vet has been out, and you know what they've given to the animal, and that's all independently verified. So you now have the opportunity to say, I would like to enter my horse into the whatever it is, discipline or race or jamboree, or even take it to the market, anywhere where animals come together and then go apart again. And you can produce pre-registered tickets on the phone that enable people on the ground to stop having stressed animals in the back of vehicles, to do spot checks instead, and to tighten up the biosecurity. It means that the animals that haven't got one of those cannot get to the place. And the way they get those is the event organizer sets up, there's a whole administration system that I won't go into here, but you have very, very smart, rapid things that come out that say, immediately, the horse is not eligible to enter because it hasn't got influenza vaccine. In this case, I don't mind what you put in there. It's whatever your risk requirement is for biosecurity. There's also the ability to say, Yes, you currently have it verified by a vet at the second, but this race or this event is not for a month. You need to make sure that you've got a booster in there before we can issue the ticket, because you won't be covered at that point. Or you're able to go through. This enables people on the gates to QR code in, everyone goes in, but you've also got a communication platform that if there's an issue, this is where you need to go. Stop going in the north gate, go in the south gate now. There's been a flood here, there's been an outbreak there, there's been whatever there has been, you've got a constant live communication with the people, which helps avoid the stressed animals and the stressed people, actually. You've also got the opportunity on the ground for people to be able to show where their animals are and what they're doing without having constantly left their documents in a van somewhere else, which is unbelievably helpful. You then come on to biosecurity and lifetime traceability. So we now know where the animals are, we know all that stuff, we know who's registered, which stud book, we know all the things, everyone's been piling information in. You can start to generate the high health certificates that enable the travel, that enable the spot checks to happen. So as we said, where are they? Where have they been? Which animals have they been in contact with? Have they got, what's their verification status of the vaccinations, and where do you focus your resource? And that puts you at the forefront of identification and traceability technology. Now, this is one of the systems we've been working on to take the data out, and it gives the agencies the opportunity to say, I have a suspected case of whatever, in this case, strangles, or I have it confirmed by the lab. What's the gestation period of that? It's 1 month, it's 3 weeks, it's 6 months, it's 2 days. I don't mind. You plug it in and you start to look, where has this animal been? Okay, I know it's been to this race course. I know it's been to that livery yard. I know it's been, it lives here. It's been over there. And who has it been in contact with? It's been in contact with all these animals. Okay, well, let's look at some of these animals at the second. Which ones are vaccinated? These ones aren't vaccinated, and that one's got a movement restriction on it already. You can now start to contact the people in real time and say, there is a problem here, you need to do X, Y, and Z. For some of the really nasty diseases that can come in, this is unbelievably important to move quickly. You can set movement restrictions on the animals, which means that the transporters that are coming out, or the vets that are coming out, or any of the other people that are starting to look at them, whether it be farriers or whoever, know what is going on, and they can start to make some good decisions about biosecurity risk. There's just another view that you can have of some of the animals that are around, and then you can generate a heat map which enables you to target resource. I spoke earlier very quickly about the opportunity to actually look at vaccinations as well and see, has the pathogen evolved? Has it changed? Has it become something else? Are the vaccinations still okay? If they're still okay, we can discount those animals. If they're not okay, we have to contact those people as well for that type of vaccination. So very quick, very fast biosecurity decisions can be made. Now, if we come on to the smart card and the ID document, we use a system that enables, as I said, the tracing of the markings. So there's the marking side. We take about 70 or 78 data points, I can't remember, not from just the animal, from all sorts of information that we're pulling in, which builds up a picture of which animal is it that we're looking at. And it enables us to deliver back with fairly good accuracy, market check numbers, UELN numbers, everything that you've got in there. A way of pulling in, it's that animal, whether it's missing, whether it's a welfare case, whether it's just turning up somewhere, whether you're buying it, whether you're selling it, whether you're putting results next to it, anything you want to do, you've got a system now that looks after that and gives people confidence in the data. Now, you can produce a digital smart card that sits on your phone. This is something that we're working on here and actually trialing in about 2 weeks' time. And you can also produce a digital passport, which you can print off the paper records if you ever need to print off the paper records. The other thing we're working on is we produce almost like a driving license size card, a credit card size card with near-field communication on it that enables you to tap and find information out about that animal in real time. It's double-sided. But again, you can fake the cards, you can fake the records, but you cannot fake the QR code, which links you straight to the record of that animal, independently verified, independently checked. And this is where it starts to become unbelievably powerful for all sorts of people to hang information off that and to make it work for them. Here's a more close-up example of the way the markings are checked. We use multi-language. So, for example, in the UK, in Europe, we have to produce everything in English and French, and if you speak one of those languages that isn't English and French in Europe, that language as well. So up to 3 languages. We can essentially sling in any language you want. That enables easy translation of data if you're moving across borders. It enables compliance internationally. The way that we put the system in, it will read a lot of the markings very quickly and automatically, and it will enable vets to not make so many errors when they're marking up animals and checking the different data points on there. It does as much automation and checking by the vets rather than inputting by the vets as possible. That also goes for other people who are able to use this. So with this information, you are able to communicate with hard to reach groups. And we have a constant issue here that there is such, I think Nick Brewer, Red Wings, referred to it as Dr. Google recently. There is such a myriad of conflicting information about welfare, best practice. What we're starting to do now is with the digital stable and with the big groups of people and with the peer-reviewed best practice information, signpost owners, keepers, whoever needs to see it. I don't mind what that information is. That's not my job to decide what that information is. I actually work with other people to say this is the way it works, and that would be something that you guys would look at if you choose to go down that route. But it gives you a channel that you can test, review, see how it happens. You've got all the platforms, you've got all the different formats, platforms, everything to get to these people. And you can test. It's all about joining up the circle of the messaging. Don't just fire stuff out there. Measure it. Find out what's working. Find out what's working with that group and that group. See if you actually need to twist them around and send that message to them and that message to them. Identify trends and see where to focus the resource. People actually want to look after their animals. A lot of people, they care for their animals. They want to do the right thing. And then you can start targeting the groups that don't want to do the right thing or aren't as well versed in things or whatever you want to do. And you can start to put policy and activity in place that helps that. And it improves the welfare of people and the whole herd if you do this. Now, this is just an example of some of the things that we send out, dealing with scandals there in partnership with Red Wings. I don't write that. That would be Red Wings that would write that. We have nothing. We just send it out through the platform, and it enables people to do what they need to do. So there we go. That's it very quickly. We haven't talked about a number of the things. We haven't talked about the transporter app in more detail, the competitive sporting, the welfare application, which enables you to trace unidentified animals to a system and link agents to it and help move it through and convert the vaccinations and add things to it. You've got a situation now where there is a base level system in there that industry can hang what they need to do off. I'm happy to take some questions, as Julie said, afterwards by email or however you want to play this, but that from me is very much it, and thank you very much for your time.